Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentors for Military. We're here with the crew. We've got Rob Gowan,
Hey,
Kyle Neal,
How are you guys doing?
and RJ and Dylan from Brigands Company. Woohoo! We got to talking about Brigands Company and how that's a symbol of a group of people that will go above and beyond, that have integrity as a paramount value. And that sort of created a tribe. And we're kind of thinking more about tribal culture, and that's something that's happening in our country. There's a lot of disadvantages that can come with tribal thinking, but there's a lot of advantages as well and a lot of strengths in it. If you've ever read Carl Junger, I believe that's the right name. You know, he's got a book about being in a tribe and the importance of that. And we thought since you guys were here, we kind of expand on that a little bit. It's something that you guys are building, and
I think it's a challenge in some ways because of how people may view the perception of what a tribe is. Personally, what I've seen, because in some cases they see it as a clique, as a niche, as an organization that may be, not wanting to conform to the norm, and so you can have some very negative connotations that come along with it, as long with maybe the positive aspects of you're building camaraderie, you're trying to build teams with common cultures and themes and beliefs or values and those types of things. But it seems like in today's society it could end up going one way or the other, and there's not always that happy medium.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like anything, like Paul was saying, it's got positives and negatives. I guess from our aspect is, like we were talking about on our full podcast earlier, we do look for like-minded individuals, and we look for those people that are already a little bit a part of their tribe, whether they know, or a part of our tribe, whether they know it or not yet. And again, there's something so powerful with being in the same room as everybody that's on that same operating level as you. You know, it's like walking into the cough at work and you're like, oh yeah, we all want the same thing, baby. There's no one that's going to stop anyone in this room. And that's great. But from an outsider's point of view, it can get very cliquey and it can get very intimidating to be a part of. And that's one thing that we've taken a second look at and try to take a step back into the Brigands Co aspect of it. As if you look at our social media, it may at a glance look a little rough around the edges, and you got to be military, or you got to be ex-Ranger bad, or you got to be special operations, and we like to preach when we can that is so far from the truth, because some of the best people that have helped us the most are those drastically opposite to what we are, and those are the people that I was talking offline a little bit earlier. Me and my brother especially, we really try, and it's really awesome when you can get all of these different people from different walks of life into the same room. And even now in Florida, we have like some of our best friends that are local surfers or skaters, and then we have some guys coming from Savannah, Georgia on a 4-day weekend to come hang out with us. And then we've got other local fireman that's here, and they're all just drinking beers in the living room or by the fire outside. Couldn't be more different. But the only thing they got in common is me and my brother and that Brigands Co t-shirt they're wearing. You know what I mean? So,
well, I think when I think of tribes, I kind of think of like genetics, right?
Sure.
If you're selecting from the same pool always, that can weaken, even though your focus may be tighter and more specific. But when you get new blood and people from different walks of life in, that strengthens your organization or your community, and then you can. It's new blood, it's new ideas, it's more resilience. It's, okay, if we all do the same things and something outside of our norm or our wheelhouse happens, now we have a vulnerability, or there's a door open for that virus to get in there if you were an organism and wreak havoc. But when you have something really robust and lots of different people in it, but the same core values, now when there's a problem that's outside of your wheelhouse, you have options and people that may be their expertise, and they can support the tribe or the individual in that manner. So I think,
it's like stacking the same grid on top of each other. If there's one hole in it, and they're all the same, you're gonna find that hole, and you guys might all through. Yeah, you might fall. You might fail together too. You know, but if you've got all these different people that are covering down on all of these weak spots and strong spots and all of this stuff, like that's what breeds success in the long run.
I've seen the same thing in the private sector, honestly, within companies in which you're trying to identify the culture within an organization when you arrive there. What is the culture of that company and those types of things. And And like you're describing, that's a great way of putting it. You have organizations that maybe have been around 20 years, and most of the people in that company have been 10, 15 plus. The problem is that they haven't really advanced in technology. They haven't really grown. They're not keeping up maybe with the patterns of how their competition is really doing, because they haven't infused that new talent who've had experience in other organizations to bring into the fold. People within the military, you're coming in and you're learning a new culture and how the military wants you to do it, and they don't really necessarily want your input so much. They want you to just fall in line, you know. So, but out in the private sector, it's definitely one of these things. You want to create your value, show your value to that organization, and what you can do in contribution. But when you come to these organizations that, like I said, have had longer tenure, you want to have a balance. You want to have people that's been around for a while that can help train those people of how you want your company to conform or, you know, grow and those types of things. But you need the new blood to walk in and go, why is it that you've always done it that way here? Have you ever thought about doing it some way out of the box of what you're currently doing right now? And I think that's healthy in really everything we do. And even in the military, I think is especially as NCOs and as officers, is we can find those opportunities of some of the new blood that are coming in from other organizations. And, you know, how did, you know, we're in the 82nd, how did the 101st do it? How did, you know, you do it at Fort Hood versus here or whatever, you know, or not knock the fact that this is the 82nd. We don't do that here, you know.
All-American way.
If you were in 425 and you said something about 82nd, you got an immediate back and brag. That's the way you got it, man. That's just 100%.
Yeah, and I think the military does a really good job of mixing new blood into different pots and keep the blood moving, because that's healthy in the
Regiment's
system.
a requirement. You know, at some point when you're going to get to rank up, they want you doing other time elsewhere, you know.
Yeah, well, that's the other part of Abrams' charter. You know, you have to go out and take what you knew from what you learned from the standard bearer of the Army, which is the regiment, and you need to diffuse that blood into these other units. I got a chance to do that. I ended up in a garrison unit in Korea, and I thought, this is going to be terrible. I'm just going to put my head down and get through the next, you know, year of my life. And I got to say, having a headquarters platoon that's half Korean soldiers, half American soldiers, all from non-combat MOSs, with the exception of, I think, my first sergeant and one other E6, although he may have had a combat MOS, but he was one of those guys. We'll leave it at that. It was the most satisfying experience of my life, because they had never met an NCO like me, which was good in many ways, because, you know, I can't write a counseling for anything, and the big Army stuff I wasn't as good at, but being able to motivate those soldiers and learn what their job was, and they responded in such a different way than privates in Ranger Battalion. Those guys, I mean, you're swimming with the sharks when you're in Ranger Battalion. You're all sharks, and it's who's the bigger shark, and it's competitive. But you also don't have to motivate those guys in the same way, because they're already ready to go. But you know, you might have somebody who's in the DFAC or in chaplain's assistance, and they've never met a hard charger or been under one, and maybe their leadership was good at their role, but they weren't a good military leader in the sense that a ranger may have been. And so getting to impress that upon them it did wonders for me. It's probably the most rewarding experience I ever had in the military.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've heard really anybody that stepped up aside from regiment to do their conventional time. I'm not sure that I've heard anybody say that was a negative experience. All of them have. I feel like everyone I've spoken to about that has just been like, wow, what an opportunity for me to lead from the front all over again, and to mold other people and to step into that true leadership role. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that sounds kind of like the whole point. Like someone was onto something here. So
Weird how that works.
The general consensus from what I've gathered.
Yeah,
so.
and I think also when you're talking about tribes, like the good tribes, look for the change. They can't wait to embrace it, because they know it's coming. It's the only thing certain is change.
Yes.
So they're always ready. They're always ready to embrace the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff quick. So it's. I think it comes down to perspective and how open you are to all of it. So
Closed-mindedness is suffocation for sure.
For sure.
And if you're circling back to business, you think of a business that's not scalable, not ready to go, not ready to take the next step.
it's going to die on the
Those
vine.
usually go by the wayside.
Yeah, for sure.
What is meant by tribe to you guys? When somebody says that, because somebody may ask that question about, okay, they're talking about tribal, but what does a tribe mean?
To me, I think of the Native Americans. I think probably because I grew up out west and you watch the movies, and that's probably my first association with that word. And I think the first thing you think of when you think of a Native American, if you're in the military, is probably like their warrior culture.
Yeah.
So obviously they had that, but they also had, people that were skilled at tanning hides and doing things of that nature, like the infrastructure stuff. And you had a healer and a shaman and, a spiritual guide. And you had a leader who was good at internal politics and external politics to help those other things. So if you really delve into that model, I think that's, at least from a very layperson's perspective, an organic embodiment of what a tribe is. And I think that sort of suits what we're talking about. If you look at the military as a tribe, in a lot of senses, it's not a great one for resilience long term. While we're all in, it's great. But then once you get out, and I say that it's not a good one because we all have the same problems, right? What are a veteran's problems? You ask anybody, it's the same 3 or 4 things. It's substance abuse, it's isolation, it's being too tough and not being willing to ask for help or seek help, and you can kind of expand on that. And so I think that's because you need 20 guys that are all the same in a platoon, and you might have different specialties, but like we're fighters.
Yeah.
And we've got Doc, but Doc's a fighter too.
Hell yeah, he is.
So to me, that's what a tribe is. A tribe is your group of people that, your 5 to 10 people that you can really lean on for different things.
Yeah.
You're my business, my professional mentor, Rob. And I've got healers in Colorado, and they're different types of healers. One's a yogi, and she's like my trainer now. And another one is a sound healer, and she's like my medicine woman now. And I have other people that fill different roles. Tara from Equine Immersion Project, she's like my mental health person, but she also mentors me in business and helps me for the spiritual side of my profession, or for my professional endeavors. So that's what a tribe is. It's those 5 people that mentor you, the 5 people that you mentor, and that have those different skills that you may need.
I never thought about it too much until I got off active duty, to be honest with you. I didn't think about a tribe. First off, there wasn't any books or anything that I read that said anything about using that word specifically. And I just thought about we all had a mission to do, and we all had a role to play to accomplish that mission together. Then you come off active duty and you realize how disconnected you are. And I didn't realize personally that I needed military people around me, that I needed to get that back into that tribe moment. And then when somebody said tribe, it kind of clicked. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. Because we play a big part of, like, while we're on active duty, it's Army against Marines versus Coast Guard versus, and when we get out, I can walk up and say, somebody says, hey, I was Johnny here. I'd like to introduce you to him. By the way, he served in the Marine Corps. And oh, dude, instantly, veteran, there's a connection. It's the tribe. But if you didn't call it, if you didn't label it or anything, I would just say it's just part of this family that I never realized that I needed and all of that. But if you say it's a tribe, I'd be like, oh, yeah, like, I thought Native American as well. Not that I grew up around a Native American, but absolutely, that's probably the first way you associate with it. But now that somebody tags it in that way, I can see that in a lot of ways we, as veterans, need to find our tribe, need to find some way to connect and get back in it.
And I think the really healthy guys that come out, healthy, like as far as habits, mindset, all that, when they step away from their team and go into the civilian world or go into whatever adventure they head towards, they naturally build that tribe around them because they're natural leaders. They naturally know what they need. They want to be in an element where there's a certain amount of homeostasis, a certain amount of whatever they're going after, and they focus that team and they get after it. So you see that on stunt teams, you see it on the fire, you see it in different walks of life, not just the military. So I think it's important.
It's funny you mention that because, like, when I think of like firefighters, LEO, all that, they're definitely in the same type of thing. They're a tribal system when they get out.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
They hang out together.
It's crazy, really. I mean, we do the fire services.
Come on, pull your mic up.
Thank you. The fire service is generally referred to as like a paramilitary organization.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would always agree, but in a lot of aspects there is, of course, and kind of like RJ was saying, when me and my brother moved down to New Smyrna, we didn't know anybody there. It was kind of like 2-man tribe, just kind of sending out the bat signal and, just kind of meeting people as we went. But, to your point, Paul, is yeah, that's how I've always considered it. Is like, I think if somebody said, hey, write down the people in your tribe right now, it's like, I don't go to RJ about the same things that I would go to my brother for, or that I would go to my lieutenant, my best friend, Cody Curran, that I work with. I go to him for separate problems. I go to my girlfriend for the worst problem. She gets the brunt of it. You know what I mean? And she's for different things. And then when I need help in a different aspect, I'm going to call RJ, and then I'm going to call someone else or something for something else. And, it's really just it's almost like a team in the military. You've got your medic that specializes here. You've got your commo guy. You've got your saw gunner, and you've got your, you've kind of got, exactly. Yeah. And you've got all of your different people, and that's kind of how I like to think of my tribe is too. If I'm stressed out at work, well, I'm going to go talk to somebody like Cody, or I'm going to talk to, some of the guys I work with. And, if it's something different and I'm just not the most confident person when it comes to Brigands Co, and I'm having a little self-doubt, well, I'm going to call up the girlfriend and she's going to get me right. You know what I mean? And if it's career stuff, or man, I need help just seeing I need to just help me see the long term here, man. Tell me we're doing something right. I'm going to call up RJ and he's going to smack it out of me. You know what I mean? And that's what tribe is to me, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when I first met you guys, you and Connor, and just to hear your story about coming out of the military and being in that place that you didn't want to be, moving down to the beach and starting to find your sea legs there. And I just watched you slowly build your team, and I was so honored to be a part of it, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's been a wild ride.
Well, and I think that's the same thing here with the podcast. A lot of people end up coming and, whether you're a host or co-host or you're a guest, there ends up being a tribe. I mean, here a couple of weeks back, we had the guys, Phil Simmons from Phil
Sussman.
Sussman. Gosh, thank you.
Got you, man.
Phil from American Yogi was down there, and Byron from Coastline Canine.
Yeah.
And Byron gave him a dog, and I don't know that they ever knew that each other was on one another was on the podcast until one of them showed up, I think, with the T-shirt on, and they go, "Dude," and then the conversation came up.
I love that.
And it's so you don't realize that, without knowing what you're doing, the way you're creating a tribe. So we talk about the circle of five. We talk about branching out of that. We talk about the people that we're influencing. They're influencing others. And sometimes it's that second and third degree of connection where you go, wait, I know that guy. Yeah. And
no, we were just talking about this at lunch. Like, you were part of Dylan's process to leave the military and to build this team, and you guys gave him.
Yeah,
you were definitely part of it.
That's a great segue into that. I didn't get to touch on it too much earlier. When I started listening to Mentors4mil, I think it was, either early 2017, late 2016, I was working for a company repelling, just washing windows in Savannah, and didn't even know where I was at in the world. And, I searched military on my podcast app. I had never listened to a podcast before. And Mentors4mil was the first one to pop up.
Thank you, algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. No kidding. But and I really want to go back and do some homework to see if I can figure out what episode it was. I mean, it had to be within y'all's first 10 or 15. I mean, it was pretty early
at that time.
And whatever it was like I was just in this slump in my life, but right out of regiment. You don't know what to call it. You don't know what it is. You're just like, I feel weird. Like, I don't know what this is, but like I can drink through it or whatever. And I think after listening to, whoever was on, a very respected individual, I'm sure, was talking about his depression and where he felt lost and like he didn't have that tribe or any of that. And as I start thinking about my own life, I'm like, man, my brother just moved to Florida. My friends have moved or they're on a deployment because all my friends were still in, and I got out and I was like, man, do I need to just get right back in and just get right back into what I know? Because this is way worse. Like, this is way, way worse. And then, I was just feeling very lost and just hearing somebody and Robert talking about, how this individual said, man, I'm depressed. And it's really like, I've lost my tribe. And it was enough for me to driving on the way to work at 7 a.m. with my coffee, and I just pulled the car over, and I was like, oh my God, like an epiphany of like, I never thought I could struggle like with these same issues, but just hearing it from someone else and then self-diagnosing just made it Like it wrote it out on paper in front of me. And I was like, oh, that's what it is. I can destroy that. Like now that I know what it is, I can destroy it. And and just find and
easier to
try.
hit a target that you can see.
Absolutely, man. And it's like, so.
But sometimes it takes a kindred spirit, like somebody that's in your tribe. Maybe you never met them, but they're still in your tribe.
100%.
And get them to say it.
You got to hear it from
Then it's the light bulb. Boom.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's I think why VFWs, when World War II was over, Korea, Vietnam, there needed to be a place, and there already was from previous generations when it was popular for there to be a building where veterans could go into, and only veterans, to have conversations, sit around the table, drink a beer, whatever the case may be, and play cards or whatever they could do to escape for that moment. This generation doesn't see that as something that's really needed, and they don't maybe go to those types of organizations, and those organizations are kind of fading away because the generations that went to them for those reasons to help them be a part of that tribe. But that's also what this generation's missing, is that they don't have that type of place, or they didn't embrace that because they thought that's the old man's place to go to, right? So by listening to a podcast, by joining an organization like Brigands, where you go and you meet up and you put the shirt on, you go pick trash off the beach, and or whatever the case may be, you don't even really realize that you're becoming part of a tribe in some way.
Sure. Yeah. It's what we spoke to earlier as well. It's like, if that's the case, if we're not showing up at these places like we used to, however many years ago, and now it's kind of switched to social media, it's switched to YouTube and to podcasting, and where I was kind of touching on earlier was make sure that these turn into real experiences. If you have the opportunity, don't keep them virtual. Yeah, that only goes so far. It's like we were talking about networking. It's like, be a yes man. If there is an event, if there is Live American Yogi and these guys are getting people together, get the freaking plane ticket and go out there and meet these guys. And it's gonna be beneficial. It's get it off your phone, and that's a great way to learn and to see what's out there and be introduced. But at some point that does need to transfer over, and it may not be at the bar, it may not be at the VFW or whatever, but it's wherever you want it to be at this point. Like use it to your advantage for sure. No,
I think that bears saying. This is one of the downfalls of social media. As great of a tool as it is for so many things, and I do find it invaluable, although I also find it very, very obnoxious. But one of its downsides is you can follow all these things. I mean, you can look at Jocko Willing's posts. 4:30 every morning, he's got a picture of his watch and a pool of sweat, and you may feel a kinsmanship with that. But if you're not doing it, if you don't have a group of people to work out with, then you're kind of cheating yourself. You may still be isolating, but at least that spark is there that you're interested. But I think that's a great point. If you're following these groups that are doing things you believe in, but you're not making that a real world experience, then that's the next step, and see if you don't feel better afterwards.
Sure. I guarantee you will.
Yeah. And the responsibility is still with you. Make no mistake. Even though you can click follow 1,000,000 times, it still comes down to you, and you got to want it yourself too. So. Yeah.
Well, that's effort versus reward, right? The greater the effort, the greater the reward.
Nailed it.
It's so easy to just hit something with your thumb, hit like, hit subscribe, but
nailed it.
Go ahead and do that on our YouTube page. But then come out and get some one team, one fight gear and support these local causes.
Well, I think there was actually a book that was written. It was called Tribal Leadership: Leveraging Natural Groups to Build a Thriving Organization. And one of the things that they got into is that there are also different levels of different tribes within organizations. So there are those who like to, maybe just kind of skim by. They want things given to them, and that type of stuff. And then there are those people who are excelling and everything else, and want to build a tribe of like-minded people who want to do everything 110% all the time. And then there is those different levels of tribes in an organization in between. And so I think at times there's people who are also searching for, what is my tribe? Yeah. And where do I fit in within that? But what I found interesting from the book that is true in a lot of things is that it's only the top 2% that's at the top, and it's usually the bottom 2% that's at the bottom, and everything else is usually sandwiched in between. And even in organizations, you find that those who are at the on the bench getting ready to take more senior roles and everything else, and your high performers tend to be the same definition as it is within the military of high performers and people who are performing in high performing, organizations because they're with like-minded people in those tribes. So whether or not we realize that when we're on active duty or when we go into the private sector or we're coming as a veteran, try to find the right tribe, but you're also going to run into individuals that's, I'm a veteran, where's my free this or where's my free that and that type. Those tribes exist out there as well if you're looking for them.
Equate it to when you got to your first unit or you're getting to a new unit and you need to get something done and you may not know somebody in the other platoon. You're going to go to somebody in that other platoon who's going to be like you. Whether you know it or not, you're going to seek them out.
Yeah.
And that's going to be your
You're
liaison.
going to attract it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it might not be like a hard definition tribe because you could be first platoon and I could be third platoon. But we're kindred spirits in that.
Yeah.
Maybe those guys don't want to get shit done. Between me and you, we can move this
You're
along.
going to get her done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it goes back to choose your own adventure, man. You're responsible for everything you do and don't do, so go for it. Might as well. You're going to get something out of it for sure.